Welcome back to Hannity, and we are in the Washington swamp where for years far-left bureaucrats burned through your hard-earned tax dollars on woke political causes, Green New Dealism, transgenderism, and, even anti-American propaganda. Those days are now over. More of my interview with President Trump and Elon Musk. As I scroll this information, and I'll scroll a lot more than I'll mention to both of you, and this is the cost savings. I want people at home to understand this part. Average American makes $66,000 a year.
Yeah.
Okay? We have $37 trillion in national debt.
Yes.
Now, all the money I'm about to mention and what we're going to scroll on our screen, and all of this is going to foreign countries. It is not being spent here in America for better schools, law and order.
I think the average tax-paying American should be mad as hell because their tax money is being poorly spent.
All right, let me go to the second question first. I want to know, because people like Joni Ernst and
Joni Ernst has tried for a long time, and she's actually got a lot of good data. Senator Ernst has been really helpful, actually.
Okay, but they actually hide what the real purpose of the spending is.
Sure.
In other words, this is a question. How did you decipher? It will say humanitarian blah, blah, blah in Serbia or Afghanistan. We even give money to China, for crying out loud, which I think is nuts.
We'll give money to the Taliban.
What money to the Taliban?
Like a lot.
All right, so
I'm like, for what?
But
I want to see the pictures of what they did.
But they try to obscure it, but then you got to the bottom line, which is what I'm now scrolling on the screen, and that is $20 million on a Sesame Street show in Iraq, $56 million to boost tourism in Tunisia and Egypt, $40 million to build schools in Jordan, $11 million to tell the Vietnamese to stop burning trash, $45 million for DEI scholarships in Burma, $520 million for consultant-driven ESG investments in Africa, DEI programs in Serbia. The president's favorite. I'm sure you love that taxpayer money was spent on a DEI musical in Ireland, or a transgender opera in Colombia, or a transgender comic book.
It sounds like how can these things be real? But this is actually what was done. It sounds like a comedy sketch.
I have 20 pages of this.
Right. It's not. It's a list a mile long.
If you had to put a number on it, how much do you think you've identified waste, fraud, abuse, corruption at this point? And again, we're going to be scrolling this throughout the program.
Well, the overall goal is to try to get $1 trillion out of the deficit. And if the deficit is not brought under control, America will go bankrupt. This is a very important thing for people to understand. A country is no different from an individual in that if an individual overspends, an individual can go bankrupt, and so can a country. And the massive waste, fraud, and abuse that has been going on, which is leading to a $2 trillion a year deficit. That's what the president was handed on Jan 20th, a $2 trillion deficit. It's insane.
For this fiscal year.
Yeah, we inherited.
Yeah.
And inflation is back. I'm only here for 2.5 weeks.
That was January.
Inflation is back.
For a week.
No, think of it. Inflation's back, and they said, "Oh, Trump inflation." I had nothing to do with it. These people have run the country. They spent money like nobody's ever spent. They were given $9 trillion to throw out the window. $9 trillion. And they spent it on the Green New scam, I call it. It's the greatest scam in the history of the country. One of them. We have a lot of them, I guess, but one of them. Dollar-wise, probably.
DEI and wokeism and transgenderism.
Well, that's all part of it, yeah.
And LGBTQ+.
Yes.
By the way, not in America. Other countries, not here.
You know, the amazing thing is when you see, like, the teaching of DEI, $9 million. How do you spend $9 million to teach? No matter what it is, you could teach physics.
Totally.
You could go to MIT for a lot less.
Expensive.
Yeah,
expensive.
the teaching of DEI.
Yes.
How much do you believe, Elon, you've identified in waste, fraud, abuse, corruption now, and how much do you anticipate you will?
Sure. I think
1%. No, because it's so massive. This is huge money.
So what we found now is 1%.
We're just got
as good as they are, they're not going to find some contract that was crooked, crooked as hell. I mean, there's going to be so much that isn't found. But what is found, I think he's going to find $1 trillion.
Yeah, I think so.
But I think it's a very small percentage compared to what it is.
Let me go to an area that I think is key, and you talked about this in recent interviews, and that is we don't need a Department of Education, okay? And what some people are trying to do is stoke fears that, oh my gosh, my kid's not going to get the money for education, or grandma's Social Security and Medicare. This was a big promise of yours on the campaign trail. So I really want to give you both an opportunity to assure the American people you will keep, that money will be allocated for students, but with higher standards, for example, I would assume associated with monies given or
just
vouchers.
So much, and then Elon goes, but look, Social Security won't be touched, other than if there's fraud or something, we're going to find it's going to be strengthened, but won't be touched. Medicare, Medicaid, none of that stuff is going to be touched.
Nothing.
You don't have to. Now, if there are illegal migrants in the system, we're going to get them out of the system and all of that, fraud, but it's not going to be touched. School. I want to bring school back to the states so that Iowa, Indiana, all these places, Idaho, New Hampshire, there's so many places, the states, I figure 35 really run well. And right now it's Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, China. China, can you imagine, has top schools. We're last. So they have a list of 40 countries. We're number 40. Usually we're 38, 39. The last time we were number 40. And what I say is you got to give it back. So it doesn't work. I'll tell you what we're number one in, cost per pupil. We spend more money than any other country by far. It's not even close per pupil. Okay. So we know it doesn't work. So we spend the most and we have the worst, right? The worst result. When we give that back to Indiana, when we give that back to Iowa and back to a lot of the states that run well, they run well. There's a lot of them, 35, 37, 38. Now, you're going to have 10 laggards, but you're going to have 5 real laggards. But that's going to be okay. Take New York. You give it to Westchester County. You give it to Suffolk County. You give it to upstate New York. And you give it to Manhattan. But you give it to 4 or 5 subsections. Same thing in California. Los Angeles is going to be a problem, but you're going to give it to places that run well. We can change education. Now, school choice is important, but that will get taken care of automatically. We want to bring education back to the states. You will spend half the number,
grants,
and I'm not even doing
vouchers,
this.
like
I'm not even doing this to save, but you will. It costs you much less money. You get a much better education. If you go to some of these states, you'll be the equivalent of Norway, Sweden, Denmark, places that really have a good school system. You'll have those places will be the equivalent, and your overall numbers will get so much better.
Do you want standards associated?
The only thing I want to do from Washington, D.C. is make sure they're teaching English, reading, writing,
math,
and
science.
arithmetic.
Science?
Okay, a little science.
Science might help.
Sure. You know,
computers.
You're not going to have much of a problem with that, but that's it.
So your task now, and I pray to God this is successful. I really do. I wish you Godspeed. You know, Godspeed, John Glenn.
It's going to be, by the way. I really believe.
But there are legitimate areas.
Do well beside this. This is cutting. We're only talking about cutting. We're also going to make a lot of money. We're taking in so much.
What about
money.
his business? What if there is
then we won't
a
let
contract
him do it.
he would otherwise
We're not
get?
going to let him do it. If he's got a conflict. I mean, look, he's in certain areas. I mean, I see this morning, I didn't know, but I said, do the right thing, where they're cutting way back on the electric vehicle subsidies.
Yes.
They're cutting back.
You're losing.
Not only cutting back.
Hurt you.
Correct.
Yeah. Now,
you don't care.
I won't tell you.
Well,
he's probably not that happy with it, but that would have been one thing he would have come to me and said, listen, you got to do me a favor. This is crazy. But this was in the tax bill. They're cutting back on the subsidies. I wasn't involved in it. I said, do what's right, and they're coming up with a tax bill. It's just preliminary. But I mean, if he were involved, wouldn't you think he'd probably do that? Now, maybe he does better if you cut back on the subsidies. Who knows? Because he figures he does think differently. He thinks he has a better product.
Yeah.
And as long as he has a level playing field, he doesn't care what you do, which is he's told me that.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't asked the president for anything ever.
And if it comes up, how will you handle it?
Well,
He won't be involved.
yeah, I'll recuse myself if it is.
If there's a conflict, he won't be involved.
Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't want that, and he won't want it.
Right, and obviously I'm getting a sort of a daily proctology exam here. You know, it's not like I'll be getting away from something in the dead of night.
Welcome to D.C. If you want a friend, get a dog.
Well, I do have a dog, but I also have friends. My dog loves me, poor little creature.
You know the truth with this?
I need to bring him to D.C.
I know every businessman. I know the good ones, the bad ones, the smart ones, the lucky ones. I know them. This guy's he's a brilliant guy. He's a great guy. He's got tremendous imagination and scientific imagination, far beyond, you know, you keep talking about a technologist and all, but you're much more than a technologist. You are that. But he's also a good person. He's a very good person, and he wants to see the country do well. And I know a lot of great business people, really great business people, but you know, they're not really, in some cases, very good people. And I know people that would try and take advantage of the situation. This guy's somebody that really cares for the country, and I saw that very early on. I saw it really a long time ago when I got to know him. He's a very different kind of a character. That's why, you know who loves him? Young people that are very smart.